Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be creating two of the same card designs, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit and do some black embossing on one of the cards and some white embossing on the other, just to kind of show you the different effects that you can get by simply changing the color of your embossing powder. I'm going to be using the Fresh Cut Flowers stamp for both of my cards, and this is a gorgeous new stamp that features a cluster of flowers. If you love markers or pencil crayons or any type of coloring medium like watercolor, this stamp is gorgeous for all of those things. But in today's video, I wanted to show you a simpler way to use this, that you don't have to have all of that coloring going on, that you can just feature the design. So I'm using my Misty stamping tool to do my stamping, and I've removed the foam pad since this is a cling mount stamp. You don't want to have the foam pad inside your Misty when you're using this. And I'm just stamping it out onto a white panel of cardstock. I'm stamping it with Versamark ink, and then I'm going to cover it with white embossing powder. And since I'm putting the embossing powder onto white cardstock, you're not really going to see it at first, but you are going to see it in the finished design. This is going to be the more subtle design, and this is where you're going to see the flower design a little bit less than when we do the black version. So you can see as I tilted in the light there that the embossing powder stuck to our stamped image, and I just took it off screen and I heat set that with my heat tool. So now we have that flower design right in the center of the panel, and even though you can't really see it right now, we're going to add color to it, which is going to bring that design out into the forefront. Now, rather than just add solid color to the background, I decided I wanted to add brick detail, and I'm going to do a rainbow pattern of color. Now, you don't have to do rainbow if you don't prefer. You could do an ombre effect where you start with a lighter color and work your way to a darker color. You could start darker and then go lighter, or you could just use a color combination that works for the design you're going for. And what you're going to do is you're just going to take the colors that you're using. I'm using an ink blending tool to do this, and I'm using Distress Inks to add the color. And I'm just going over top of the stencil, which I have secured in place with some removable Post-it tape. And I'm just adding the colors one by one until I have the panel completely covered in ink. I love this part of an embossed design where you have something embossed with the embossing powder on a panel and then you start to add color, because you can see the designs start to come through as you add each layer of color. Now it's a little harder with the brick stencil over top, so once we remove that here, we're going to be able to see that flower design. Now, like I mentioned, this is the more subtle version, so it's not hugely prominent when I lift this up, but you can definitely see that flower detail, and even more so in real life. And because it's dimensional, because it's a heat embossed powder, you also get that little bit of texture. I love how this looks against the brick for a very soft design kind of ingrained in that color. And then I did trim it down so that we have no white edges around the outside edge. So now I'm going to repeat the same process, but this time we're going to emboss it with black. And you're going to see how much different it looks when you change up and go really dark with the black color versus the really soft white. So when I heat emboss with black, I like to use a black pigment ink, so I'm just using some VersaFine ink here, and then I like to cover it with clear embossing powder. I just find it's a little bit less messy to do it this way, but you can definitely heat emboss it with black embossing powder if that's what you prefer. So if you use black embossing powder, you just want to stamp that with Versamark ink and add the embossing powder over top, or you can do it as I did and use a black pigment ink, which stays wet longer, and then just add clear embossing powder to the top. I did heat set that with my heat tool, and now we're going to do the same thing we did with the first one, but I'm going to add the color over top of the black panel instead. So I'm just going to secure everything in place once again. I like to secure my panel first so that I know it's not going to shift underneath of the stencil, and then I also add removable tape along the outside edges of the stencil. You can kind of hold it in place and not adhere it down. I just find this is a little bit easier since the stencil does like to move a bit when you start to apply that ink. And now I'm just going to go ahead and do the exact same colors. I didn't want to change up the colors at all. I want to do it completely the same as I did the first one so you can really see the difference between the black versus the white for the embossing. So I'm taking my Distress Inks once again and I'm going in rainbow order, and I'm just going to go ahead and completely cover this panel until I have all of the colors added. And if you feel like you're getting really harsh lines between each of the colors, you can go back and forth with your different blending tools and really help to blend that out. So now when I peel off the stencil, you can see the amazing difference between the first one we did and this one. The black really stands out against that brick detail and is a lot more prominent on the overall design. To finish these off, I'm going to mount them onto card bases that are the same color as the embossing powder I used. So the white one I added to a white card base and the black one to a black one. And they are A2 size cards, which measure 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now I did decide to mix it up when I added the sentiment. So I have some sentiment strips here that I stamped from the Heart stamp set onto both black and white cardstock. On the black cardstock, I used white embossing powder to heat set those, and on the white ones, I just stamped them directly with black ink. And I'm just adhering these onto the cards. Now, I could have stayed with the same colors like I did with the card base, but I decided to change it up and use the white strips on the black embossed panel and the black ones on the white. I really like the contrast of changing them up and having that really bold sentiment on the very soft background, and then having the softer version of the sentiment strips on the bold background. And then once I had that done, I added some clear droplets for a little bit of dimension. So now you can really see the difference of black and white embossing. You can get a really soft look, which is very beautiful, and it's very subtle, so if you don't want it to be really prominent, or you can get that really bold design with the black embossing powder. So I hope this gave you some ideas on different ways that you can change up your embossing powders to get different looks. As always, I appreciate you being here for today's video, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.